everybody, and welcome back to episode number 49 of the Mixology Talk podcast. Now, I don't know about you, but summer is just starting around here, and I can tell by looking around my grocery store and, frankly, looking at the street corners, we're starting to see amazing fruit showing up. So I thought maybe it might be kind of fun to talk about different ways to preserve that fruit for when the grocery store offerings aren't so good. So that's what we're talking about today. Let's get into it.
So now that we're kind of getting into the middle of summer and we're starting to see a lot of fruit for sale, we thought we'd do an episode on how to preserve some of that fruit flavor and save those for when we don't have access to such great produce.
Definitely. Yeah, we're seeing people sitting on the street corners with strawberries and peaches and all sorts of good stuff. So definitely want to make sure we don't lose that. So the concept is nothing new. In fact, it's way older than cocktail themselves. The idea of preserving fruits and vegetables is basically as old as humanity, I think.
Yeah.
But I think the nice thing, or the neat thing, is that some of the techniques that you use in preserving fruit for cocktails are the same exact techniques that have been used for thousands of years.
Yeah, and the very easiest way to preserve some of this fruit flavor is actually to use sugar. Sugar is a really great natural preservative. That's why you see it in a lot of our food.
Yeah, don't you sometimes hear about honey being found in like shipwrecks and ancient burial digs, and it's like still good to eat?
Oh, I hope so.
Sounds kind of gross, but that's what I've heard. And it's all about the sugar content. I guess the sugar, having such a high sugar content makes it impossible for bacteria and mold and all that good stuff to make a home there. So
right. Now you're speaking my language.
I know, bacteria and mold.
It's all about osmotic pressure.
Oh, no.
Yeah,
no. Abort.
Sorry.
Abort podcast. So anyway, the moral of the story is putting lots of sugar in something can make it last longer. This is why you may notice that a rich simple syrup will last longer in the fridge than a normal simple syrup. It's because of the sugar content.
Yeah, so there are actually quite a few different ways to make a flavored syrup. The first and easiest way is a process called maceration.
Which is really just a fancy way of like chopping up the fruit and putting it in a bowl with sugar, right?
Right, exactly. So if you've ever made strawberry shortcake before and you put a little bit of sugar on top of your strawberries and you start to see all that juice start to flow out, that's all it is. Just chop up a bunch of fruit, pour a bunch of sugar on top.
We made a melon syrup or a melon liqueur for a melon ball cocktail like this. And we recently made a prickly pear cocktail the same way. And basically you just get the fruit, chop it up, put it in a bowl and cover it in sugar, give it a good stir. And when you let it sit, you'll notice that a lot of juice starts to appear. I have no idea why, but I'm sure Chris will tell us.
I wish I could. I think it's all about the fusion and like balances. So
cold fusion.
Yeah,
literally
much. The wave of the future.
Cold fusion would be an awesome cocktail name.
That would be a good name.
Oh, that might be coming soon. We're so bad. We're so bad at naming cocktails.
Now we have to figure out what's in it, though.
That's true. So basically, when you macerate, you end up with a kind of a soupy, sweet, fruity mixture. And what you're going to do is you're going to take that after you've got some good juice coming out. After what do you normally do? 6 hours overnight?
Yeah,
depending on what you're going for. And if you're in a rush, you can just use more fruit and wait less time.
Right.
Then go ahead and fine strain that to remove the fruit itself. And the result is going to be a really nice syrup that you can use right away.
Yeah, the beautiful thing about this process, it's super easy. And it really preserves the freshness of the fruit. So you get all that really great fruit flavor. It's a lot of fun.
Yeah, definitely. And the sort of brightness, too, which is in contrast to method number 2, which is to actually cook the fruit and make a syrup out of it. So similar to macerating, you're going to go ahead and chop up your fruit, but this time you're going to put it in a saucepan.
Yeah, and just kind of let it simmer for a little while. And it'll
do you put sugar
extract. Before
or after you simmer?
I usually do it with the sugar.
Okay.
So what I'll do is I'll make like a 1-to-1 simple syrup and add the fruit in there and let it reduce by half. So what you end up with is a really rich simple syrup with fruit flavor to it as well.
That makes sense, but you're definitely going to get more of a cooked flavor. So if you imagine the difference between strawberry jam and a fresh strawberry, you typically see more acidity in the fresh strawberry. You see more of that sort of brightness. You're going to lose a little bit of that with the cooking method, but that's not to say it's a bad thing. It's just a different flavor.
Right, absolutely.
So keep that in mind when you're thinking about what your final cocktail wants to taste like. If you're going for something a little bit more dark and brooding, you may want to go ahead and cook that fruit. If you're going for something bright and summery, then you're probably going to want to go with the maceration approach.
Yeah, and the last option is to actually just use the juice.
Right. I know there's a couple different kinds of juicers out there, and we've done quite a bit of this. And I'll tell you right now, you cannot juice anything without making a massive mess.
Yeah, it's pretty fun.
Be prepared, bring a mop. But I will say you can get, if you're looking for a flavor that is just the closest to the fruit itself, in my opinion, this is the way to go.
Yeah. What was the cocktail we made with the tequila with cantaloupe?
Oh, that was such a mess. Unbelievable mess. It was incredible.
But it was so tasty.
It was so good. Yeah, it's worth it. But yeah, like I said, bring a mop.
Yeah, I think we went through about 35 cantaloupes that day or something.
It was for a big event. So Chris and I are not drinking that much juice. But yeah, it is a great way to pull out the flavor. And it does depend on having a juicer, in my opinion. Right. I would invest in a juicer if you're looking to use this approach. You can buy them on Craigslist. It's like one of those things that people buy their family members for Christmas when their family members don't really want it. So if you're shopping around like February, you can get a really good deal. I know that because Chris's birthday is in February, and that's where we got ours.
Exactly. So it's either the bread maker that nobody ever uses again, or the juicer. Go with the juicer.
Exactly. Yeah, so you can get pretty good deals in February. That's a little tip from Julia there.
Yeah, so the next easiest way to extract some of this flavor is through infusions. So we know that sugar is a pretty damn good preservative, and that's not a big surprise, but alcohol is too. It's a great way to preserve a lot of fruit.
I think it's pretty well known. I mean, you think of alcohol, it's used as like an antiseptic in medicine, so it kind of makes sense that you're not going to see a lot of the sort of mold and bacteria living in there, so why not use it to our advantage? Mm-hmm. So when you're making a fruit infusion, in my experience, it seems like different kinds of, some fruits work better than others in this approach. So it works really well with citrus, using the rinds of lemons or limes or orange, which is actually kind of how they make limoncello. It's step one. But is there any sort of rules that you have for types of fruit that you will infuse versus won't?
No, I think you could pretty much infuse anything. One of the things I've kind of experienced in the past is that it kind of dulls the fruit flavor. So typically I'll try to infuse things that don't have a high water content. So
that makes sense.
I'll stay away from like watermelon, obviously.
Right.
I really like using like teas and hard spices, but with fruit flavors, you can definitely do it, keep it around for a long time and use it through the winter when you need it.
Right. And that's, I mean, if I remember correctly, you once made a cocktail that required a fig infusion.
I did, yeah. Actually.
And that's not a fruit you normally see getting infused, but it worked really, really nicely.
Mm-hmm. And throughout the winter, I actually used dried figs too, and it was really great because there wasn't a lot of water content, so it really was able to extract that fruit flavor from it.
That's an interesting idea and something that is kind of against the topic of this episode, but if you do want to infuse in a season when there isn't fresh fruit, sounds like maybe dried fruit might be a good choice.
Yeah, it's a good choice. You're definitely not going to get that fresh flavor, but it's still pretty good.
So maybe dehydrate your fruit now. Take your fresh fruit from the street corner, put it in your dehydrator, which I do not have one. I'll check Craigslist next February. Go ahead and dry that out, and then that's another way to preserve it for the winter.
Yeah, there you go.
I just thought of that.
And actually, there is two more ways of preserving your fruit. The next one is actually make a jelly out of it. Jelly and cocktails are really good. Marmalades.
Interesting.
Yeah, and you only need about a teaspoon in your cocktail. And you're still going to need to add sugar, obviously, but it adds a really great flavor that is going to be hard to get from other extraction methods.
Yeah, that's an interesting thought because jellies are, so my understanding is the difference between jams and jellies is that jams have kind of fruit chunks in it, whereas jellies are
you could use both.
Not.
Yeah. So, basically any of those kind of preserved fruit.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, and if you think about it, it's fruit flavor, it's sugar, and it's some sort of binder in there. And frankly, we use binder in cocktails too. We use egg whites, we use things like that. So there's no reason not to.
Yeah, and it does a really great job in cocktails. And it's kind of fun when, you're hosting an event and somebody sees you put a fig jam in your cocktail or something. They're like, what the hell are you doing?
You cheater.
Right, exactly.
It's totally cheating, but we highly approve.
It's a good way to add additional flavor to a drink. And the final method is to actually create a shrub.
And we are not talking about that plant in your front yard. We're actually talking about a really old technique preserving fruit flavor, right?
Right, yeah. So this is pre-colonial days, or colonial days, I guess. Mm-hmm. And it's basically a way of extracting flavor using vinegar and making it into a drinking vinegar, which sounds a bit strange. But
yeah, when I hear the word drinking vinegar, it's not the first thing that sounds super appealing. But I think that this is a nice approach for people who tend to prefer less sweet options, because you may notice a lot of the options we've talked about have required quite a bit of sugar. Whereas this one, yes, it's still sweet, but there's more of a savory flavor profile. And so this is a good option for people like Chris, who tend to gravitate towards more savory cocktails.
Yeah, and you could go really crazy on the flavor combinations that you put in Shrubs. I know there was a guy in New Orleans over at Hi Hat that was making mushroom shrub.
Oh my gosh.
Which was really interesting. I think it was Maitake mushroom shrub.
That's amazing.
Like, that's cool. He's a really amazing cocktail creator. And if you ever get a chance, if you're in New Orleans, definitely go check out Hi Hat. He's doing some really fun stuff down there.
Yeah, we'll put a link in the show notes for sure. So how do you make a shrub in like 3 sentences?
So if anybody's familiar with a gastrique, basically it's sugar, flavor, and vinegar.
Interesting.
And it's a cooking, something that's known in the cooking world. But that's pretty much it.
So you actually are making it with vinegar.
Right, absolutely.
So you're not making vinegar, you're using vinegar in the recipe.
So think of it as a fruit syrup, and you're replacing the water with vinegar.
Oh, that makes sense. Yeah. Okay. And actually, we did a video on making shrubs, and I'll definitely include that in the show notes, because that'll be a far more in-depth discussion on how to do it.
And the vinegar kind of takes the place of fruit acid, basically, in this kind of cocktail syrup. But definitely fun, and you can experiment like crazy with this particular one.
Yeah, you've made quite a few really interesting mixtures, not just, for example, a strawberry shrub, but maybe a strawberry celery shrub or things like that. And what's nice about shrubs is, frankly, you can drink them on their own. Like, you don't need to actually put them in a cocktail. You can mix them with sparkling water, and it's a really nice summer drink. So there's a lot of good options there.
Yeah, absolutely. So yeah, that's some great ways to preserve some of that fruit flavor, all that bounty of fruit that we're going to get over the summer. Great way to preserve them for the long, hard winter.
So that wraps it up. 4 different ways that you can go ahead and preserve that delicious fruit that's happening now and not going to be available later. By the way, if you're enjoying this podcast, definitely let us know. Head over to iTunes and leave us a rating and review. It means a lot to us, and it helps other people find this podcast. And really, let's be honest, it's good for everybody if we all learn to make better cocktails. Thanks so much, everyone. We'll catch you next time.